Top of the Premier League is where Manchester City and Liverpool have been for most of the last 3 seasons. Two sides will meet Sunday at Anfield. Currently 3 places and 7 points, the difference between the two. Advantage to Manchester City, who also have a game in hand. Apparently not the only advantage for Manchester City. Here's what Jurgen Klopp has had to say. Quote, "We haven't had a break. I think Manchester City had a 2-week break for COVID reasons. It's really tough. It's a tough season for many teams." This, of course, drawing a response from his counterpart, Pep Guardiola. Quote, "I'll tell him tomorrow. He knows it's not true. Come on. Nobody in the Premier League has had 2 weeks off. I'm surprised. I thought Jurgen was not that type of manager like the other ones who are usually doing it. I didn't expect that comment." Craig and Stewart with us here on ESPN FC. Craig, I'll start with you. The war of words has begun. No surprise, Jurgen Klopp started it.
Well, I think Klopp's in his own head, never mind trying to get into other managers' heads. But, I mean, I'm not quite sure where these 2 weeks came about. Can anybody shed some light on this for me?
Well, it did.
Debbie.
That's why.
Yeah, I don't think it did. And in fact, if it did, if there was a break, it was because Manchester City had COVID-19 cases, which is definitely not what Jurgen Klopp wants for his team.
I broke with tradition on this show earlier today and I did a bit of prep. In between watching the European Tour and the PGA Tour in Scottsdale, I had a little look back. And listen, City did have a break. Both teams had a break in November, by the way, from the 8th of November, Liverpool to the 21st, or City to the 21st, Liverpool to the 22nd, so Liverpool had an extra day. Over Christmas, City did have a break between the 26th of December and the 3rd of January, so around 8 days. But then Liverpool had this break. Now, bear this in mind. 4th of January, they lost at Southampton. They didn't play in the Premier League again until the 17th of January and that awful game against Man United. That's 13 days. Now, there was a game in between that, right, which was on January the 8th, which was an FA Cup game. So you could say from the 8th to the 17th, they had 9 days rest. But that FA Cup game for Liverpool, wait for it, was against Aston Villa's under-23s, right? So it's basically a training game, which they won 4-1. And I look back on that, they had 83% possession and almost 30 pops on goal. Andy was able to rest Alisson, Firmino, Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, and Thiago. So he basically had, if you discount that game as a training game against the kids as it was, Klopp basically had from the 4th of January to the 17th of January before he faced elite-level opponents. So he's in his own head, put it that way.
All to say, Stevie, I mean, there's no real grounds to this complaint from Klopp.
No, and it's, you know, the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's been how great is this guy? How positive is this guy?
So what happened?
What a guy. Now, all of a sudden, and it's a true saying, you always find out the character of somebody when things are going wrong. And unfortunately, right now, he's failing because all he's done is complain. Now, it's not exactly a theatrical complaint, but it's just something that he's obviously been thinking about, and he's thrown it in. I mean, listen, why do you want to, regardless of whether it's Man City or anybody else, why do you want to go and upset your next opponent anyway?
Yeah. And so give your own team an excuse.
Well, I'm sorry. Listen, if you want to use stuff like this to have the bunker-down mentality within your own team and your own club, then that's fine. But you don't do it in the press. I mean, that just smacks of sour grapes.
Robbo, what's his aim here? What's his play here? Because to me, it seems like he's setting the table for a defeat.
As we've spoken about many, many times, he's completely, in my view, lost the plot in terms of how to deal with the press, how to deal with the pressure. He's making every excuse he can possibly give at the moment. And I saw it many, many years ago, and I'm going to mention his name again, Arsene Wenger, in a similar sort of situation when they had 4 or 5 defeats, and he then went into the press and said, "We're the most fouled team in the Premier League." And the press said to him, "Actually, you're not. You're the 8th most fouled team in the Premier League." He kept on saying, "No, we're the most fouled team." And if you're going to say things in the press, you've got to get your facts right. And if he doesn't get his facts right, he's going to come for criticism, Klopp. And he hasn't got his facts right, as Craig quite rightly said. And Craig should be a lawyer, shouldn't he, after that little demonstration?
Craig, 10-point gap if Liverpool were to lose. Does this make it a must-win?
Yes, I think so. You know, City could take a draw. It's not ideal for them, but they could take a draw. But with the game in hand they've got, then I think Liverpool need to get some momentum going. Look, you said what's his aim in this rhetoric. I don't think he has an aim. I don't think he's playing a game. I think he believes it. I think he's believed it from pretty much the start of the season when the Van Dijk injury came along, which was dreadfully handled by the officials. We accept that. And it's sort of steamrolled from there with all the problems that they've had. But then he's brought on himself this belief in his own mind, and he's perpetuated it to his players, that the broadcasters were against him, that the league were hedging against him. Now it's the teams with COVID and the problems they've had with COVID. And listen, City have had self-inflicted COVID issues. There's no doubt about that. It's been well documented. But they've also had issues, COVID issues like others, that have come about through no fault of their own. And one of those players is Sergio Aguero, who's been out most of the season. So I think in his own mind, Klopp believes what he's saying. Maybe some of it is tongue-in-cheek, but I think the majority, he actually thinks everyone's been against him this year. Certainly they haven't had a great deal of luck in terms of the injuries. There's no doubt about that. And as I said a couple of days ago on the show, there's no disgrace in not playing well when you're having to play so many players out of position. And I'm talking about the midfielders going back and playing in centre-half. There's no shame in not being in the title race this year if they lose or if they're in poor form like they have been. Because their injuries, the one thing that he can back up is to say, we've had a really bad season with injuries. That they have done. But the rest of it, Sebi, is just an utter nonsense. And listen, he's pretty much he doesn't need to do this. He's got pretty much a free pass with what he's delivered for that club over the last couple of years. He doesn't need to go down this road that's making him look a little bit like a crybaby in the circumstances.
Craig mentions the injuries. Let's talk centre half. Is this the weekend for Kabak, for Davies? This is why you brought him in, right?
Well, you sign players to, because of your injuries, you need bodies.
Right.
Listen, Ben Davies, as good as he may be in the Championship, is not ready to step into the Premier League after a couple of days and play against Manchester City. And I would suggest that Kabak isn't either. Schalke are last in the Bundesliga. Defensively, they're horrendous.
Well, why'd they bring these guys in then?
Because they need bodies. You've got two central midfielders playing centre-back. You have to do something. You have to get bodies in. Because right now, because the two centre midfielders are playing centre-back, it's killing you going forward. So you have to make a decision. You either keep the two centre-backs where they are, the centre midfielders, and you don't sign anybody, or you take a gamble. And that's what they've done. They've taken a gamble. I would suggest, however, you don't play them after 2 days of training when they don't probably even know the players' names.
Alisson a doubt, Fabinho a doubt, Mane a doubt. So Liverpool issues maybe stacking up there. Robbo, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, I would go against Stevie. I'd say he has to play one of them at least to try and get one or two of those midfield players back into that central area. Because whenever Liverpool have beaten Manchester City, and they've got away with some dubious tackles as well, particularly at Anfield, it's been when the crowd have been baying for blood. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And Liverpool's midfield have been tight. They've got tackles in. They've won back possession high up the field. They've run all over the park. In the midfield they've got at the moment, without Henderson in there, they can't do that. So I see Manchester City dominating possession, running the game and winning the game quite comfortably. But if he can put one or two of those midfield players back in there and make it a real battle and a real fight, they've got half a chance.
Craig, who are you taking on Sunday?
Well, I'm with Robbo here in a sense that I don't know that it will happen, but if Fabinho's fit and he goes back in there, it's likelihood is it will be the young boy Davies from Preston North End, the left footer. But you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't here, because you put somebody who has championship experience in only, certainly recently, and you put him in against this City side. I mean, this City side have been, pulling teams up. They haven't been scoring the goals, as Stevie pointed out in the show a couple of days ago, but they've still been pulling sides from pillar to post. And that it is a big call to try and stiffen up your midfield to potentially put one of those players in. And that's going to come down to the management. But listen, I think the way it's gone at the moment, if City continue to play and defend the way they have been, I could see them just picking up another victory. I think it'll end Liverpool's quest to even have a sniff at the title, and their fight will be for the top four. That's where their form would suggest it is. and I think it would continue City on as the favourites for this Premier League title, unless Liverpool can come up with something that ruffles the defence of the feathers of this defence that have been excellent. 13 games unbeaten, umpteen clean sheets. They've been rock solid.
So let me tell you something. I played in the Championship and then went and played back in the Premier League. And I was flabbergasted at the difference in pace.
Yep.
And if Craig's right and Ben Davies goes in there, his head's going to be spinning. You know, it's one thing to play when you can see everything and you can read things. But when that pace is ratcheted up, you don't see things clearly and you don't read things as quickly. That's a problem.
All right, we'll have to... Who's winning?
Oh,
he had to say it. He had to get it in there. That was Manchester City for those that didn't understand the accent there. Here's a look at your Premier League schedule for the coming weekend. Action starts early Saturday. Aston Villa hosting Arsenal and wraps up with a one match on Monday. Leeds United at home against Crystal Palace.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.